match. I do want to thank you for taking the time. Obviously, we're going to open this up, talk about Patrick McEnroe and his future and the future of USTA player development. But before we go to questions and answers, I think Patrick had a few words. Patrick?
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I know it's sort of, you reporters are pretty darn good, so you figure stuff out. Maybe before we had planned to announce it, just be able to talk to my staff and just talk to some other people. But the reality is that I will be stepping down from my position over the course of the last couple of months, as we've been looking ahead to what our plans will be in Orlando at Lake Nona for the USTA and specifically for player development. I think Gordon and I both kind of reached the same conclusion. Gordon, my boss, Dave, his boss, that the head of player development with the new direction that we're heading in, continuing what we've already started with our inclusive efforts and working with the developmental coaches and the private sector a little bit more, trying to do a better job in that area, that it made all the sense in the world for this person in this position to be full-time based in Orlando. And I think we both looked at each other over the course of obviously quite a few discussions over the last few months and realized that that probably wasn't going to be me for a variety of reasons, both professional and personal. But I certainly felt, as did Gordon and Dave, that it was crucial for this person to be down there full-time with the amount of resources and efforts that we're putting into the new facility and the new programming in Orlando. So we felt that this was the right opportunity to start a transitional phase so that hopefully I can be involved somewhat over the next few months, however that long may be, to help with the direction that I think we're going in, which I believe is extremely positive. And I'm lucky enough to have a couple of members of my team here. Again, I couldn't get to a lot of them because of just the way this transpired, but they've really done tremendous work on our team and player development. They're going to continue to do that and continue to push forward with the direction we're going.
Yeah, when Patrick came to me and told me that he wasn't going to be making the move to Orlando, I really reflected back because I hired Patrick way back whenever it was Patrick. And we hired Patrick for a pretty narrow job at the time. You recall it was elite player development. It was just about a very few players. And Patrick realized that the United States really needed a broad-based, organized, regional and national program. And so now we're in such a different place because of what Patrick has done and what he's brought to this country in terms of player development. We have a set of regional training centers around the country. We have a very organized coaching education program to raise the level of all coaches. We have much more outreach than we've ever had before. And from where we started to where we are has been quite a journey. And I will tell you that Patrick has really created a foundation that we will build on. And Patrick will be actively involved for the foreseeable future on a transition. But he realized, came to me, he said, look, we're building this new place. We're going to be making all these plans. If I'm not going to enter, the person who needs to be involved in that process along the way. But in the meantime, Patrick will be involved in helping us find who that person will be and helping us with that transition as we continue forward.
Yeah, just to add, not to be repetitive, but I think the last 2 years we really have been focused on trying to reach out, be more inclusive, think about Team USA and think about doing what's right for American tennis. And Patrick's done a fantastic job. He's answered everything that the board has asked and really taken us in that direction. And that will continue. That's very important that we continue to do what we're doing. We've had some good success. So thank you for all that you've done. And Patrick will be very helpful in helping guide us as to where we go in the future in succession.
Thank you. We're going to open it up to questions. Lisa?
Why now have a full-time person? With the salary grade that you've been getting, wasn't this a full-time salary position before? So why the change now?
I don't think it's a full-time. I always saw this job as full-time. I mean, pretty committed to doing what's right for the USTA and for player development in general. So obviously I did some other things, still do some other things as well. That's obvious. I think when I initially took the job, that was really seen as a positive. I know there have been critics about that over the years, and there certainly comes with the territory. But what I don't think it was so much about the time commitment, was more about the location and the resources being put into what we're doing in Orlando, trying to make that really the centerpiece of much of player development moving forward. As you know, we have a home here that we didn't have when I first started here. Obviously, we have a presence in Southern California as well. We have lots of regional training centers that we partner with. So the job really encompasses, I believe, the whole country. But I believe that moving forward, not just for player development, for community tennis as well, that is going to be moving down to Orlando. I just think it's even more important. You could certainly argue that I should have been in Florida, living there, that I didn't do the job. That's your right to do that. But I think moving forward, that I felt that the position needed to be in Orlando on a full-time basis. I certainly felt that I was doing the job from here over the last 6 years. Because I was able to use my energies in a lot of different places. The job, as Gordon said, it changed a lot over time. It changes from year to year as far as what your focuses are, based on what's happening in the field, based on different priorities. But I do think that we're headed in a very positive direction. Obviously, when you look at the top of what we deal with, which is what a lot of people are interested in, is how are our top players doing? Obviously, we're doing pretty well on the women's side. We've got a lot of work to do on the men's side at the top, but I think we have a great group of youngsters coming up. That way, I think we're all very optimistic about the future for them. So there's a lot of tentacles that go into this job, certainly more than I realized going forward, and that's why having a great team in place, and some of them here, is, to me, probably the most important, of having the right people in place to do the job.
Chris?
Dave, is there any component, for Patrick too, is there any component of this, based on the fact that the results haven't been what you hoped, in terms of on the court, with the men, is there any aspect of that?
You want to start first?
I'm happy to
Yeah,
say,
please, yeah.
the answer to that is no. If you look at where we are and where we've come from, I think, as I've said, we have a great foundation. Frankly, I think we're going to see the results of that. We have 12 women in the top 100, 12 more in 100 to 200, far more than any other country. Many of those we have had a positive influence on. We're not as far along on the boys. You look at Wimbledon, we had 7 out of the 16 in the round of 16, 3 out of 4 semifinalists and both finalists. So we're really gaining steam, and I'm very happy with the foundation. And make no mistake, we're going to continue the course. This is not a change in direction.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
No, just to add to that, I think, the driving forces of what we're going to be doing at Lake Nona, because that's really a change. And I think that this is Patrick saying, look, I know this is going to be happening. We have to do what's right. We have to plan for it. We have to make a transition. And you don't do that so soon that you can't react and have the plan in place that you want to have. And I think that's really the key driver here.
Patrick, what would you say over the last 6 years you're most proud of, and what would you do differently if given the opportunity?
I'm most proud of the team that's in place, and the commitment and the passion of the people that are working in the program, and the outreach, I think, more recently, and I think Dave was a big impetus towards pushing us in that direction to put more structure to that. We always felt like we, meaning in player development, we were doing that, but I think it forced us to look in the mirror and realize we need to do things better in our outreach, and I think that there's a real sense that that's headed in a positive direction. What would I do differently? I mean, you always look back and say there are things I would like us to do even better in coaching education. I think that's a huge issue for our country in general. The fact that we're the only governing body in the world that doesn't certify its own coaches, I think that's a big issue. So there's always things you could have done better. I would love to see that every male player we work with was in the second week of the U.S. Open. But I'm also realistic. I also see what the world looks like. And overall, I'm just very proud of the people that have worked under me and that are dedicated to what they do. And I believe I've had some influence on them and some positivity towards them. And I expect that to continue from them.
And as a follow to that, what's next for you?
Well, what's next for me is, we have a full staff meeting that we have in October. with our whole team that we do every year, and that was certainly a big impetus for me to announce this now, because the last thing I wanted to do would be to go with the 54 people that work in player development under false pretenses, to not let them know what was going on. So that really started this discussion that, I want to get this out. I want to go down there. I want to be out. I'm not very good at lying, so I'm pretty good at being straightforward and honest. And so I want to continue to do that, and I want to work with the team moving forward. As much as these gentlemen want me to be involved, I'll stay involved, and keep this train headed in the right direction.
John?
When we spoke a month ago in San Diego, you were making the rounds, you've been to 6 sections, you've been talking.
9 sections, but who's counting?
And you were very candid. You said there was a sense that we were pissing a lot of people off, trying to do it our way, even though we thought we were doing our regional training centers the right way. And a lot of people thought it was good. This sense of having pissed off a lot of people, how did that play into your decision?
No, that didn't play into my decision at all. I think that comes with the territory. I think that's part of me learning on the job. I learned a lot of things. I believe I got better at what I did. Certainly I made mistakes, as we did within the program, and as probably a lot of private coaches did, when they're trying to work with kids. It's difficult. It's very difficult to create top-level players, and I think I have a newfound respect for what my parents did, to create 2 players. One was really good, another was pretty good, but also for parents of junior players, for coaches of junior players, for the whole process. I think I never really understood it as a player. And now when you get to really see it, and you see the work that goes into it and the dedication, et cetera, you realize it's pretty hard, to get to the promised land, so to speak, to play at the U.S. Open. And obviously the world has caught up to us when it comes to the highest level of tennis. And I think that's a great thing. It's great for tennis. It's a global sport. We're trying to do things better, and I think that means all of us. That means we in player development. That means in the private sector, et cetera. We all got to work together. And I think maybe that's one thing I wish I had grabbed onto a little bit earlier, because I do think it's really paying off for us, and for not just for us, but for for American tennis in general.
You think those 9 sections are ready to work with your success?
Absolutely. There's a lot of great people, a lot of dedicated people. This is not about, this program has never been about one person. It's never going to be. It's too big. There's too many entities, not just within our program, but with the sections, with the private sector, et cetera. So it has to be, to me, the job is one of mostly of leadership and of vision. And I think that I was successful in some of those areas. As I said, coaching education has come under player development. That was something that I was certainly supportive of. I think that's a positive. Us and my friend Kurt Camperman, who runs community tennis, we've worked side by side a lot more than we ever did. I think that's a positive for tennis, and I think that has to continue.
What does this mean for Jose, Jay?
Well, I'll let Gordon answer that.
So, look, Patrick said it. Patrick's created a great team and a great staff. They're moving in the right direction, and we want them to continue to move in that direction. And we don't see changes in what we're doing or who's doing it.
Bill? Patrick, first, thanks for all the sweat and the work.
Thank you.
Used to be when Andre was around, whether it was in Zimbabwe or California, he was really leading the team. And you know as well as anyone how Roddick was just an incredible, charismatic leader pulling for America. Now when you talk to John and Sam, who are terrific people, or even all the way down to Oswald and Ruben, there's more of a culture of, I'm working on my own game, that's what I'm interested in, and there isn't that urgency of the, hey, we've got to make this happen for America today. Could you comment about that? Do you sense that? Do you think that's an issue of any kind?
I think it's not up to the individual player to do it for their country, so to speak. It's up for them to do it for themselves. I mean, as a Davis Cup captain for 10 years, I spent a lot of time with Andy Roddick, and he had an incredible energy and intensity level that was from him. That was him. obviously he loved playing for his country. He loved supporting American tennis. And I think that we have a lot of kids and a lot of players that have that. I think we just need to get better. I mean, our players need to get better. The coaching needs to get better. We want to be as much of a support as we can and a resource for all things tennis, for our best players, for our young coaches, for getting people in the pipeline, for junior tennis, for collegiate tennis. You know, we created a separate position in the last couple of years just to focus solely on collegiate tennis and what we can do to help support the best players coming out of college. So the answer to that question is I believe we have some of that. And great players obviously have certain individuality to them. I mean, look at Michael Chang. I mean, out there coaching now. I mean, his intensity and energy, I think, has made a tangible difference in someone like a Kei Nishikori. So we could always get better at that. I hope I answered your question. I'm not trying to skirt it. I just I don't see that it's, you know, that I don't look at that and say that's our issue. You know, I look at that and say we need to get better as coaches, as mentors, as players. We need to play tennis better. We need to train better. We need to be smarter, et cetera.
I realize it's early on, but do you have any sense of a description of the job or the replacement of Patrick? Say, does it have to be a former player or just a great developmental coach or somebody maybe who has a business background a little bit? I mean, do you have a sense of that yet?
Are you going to knock my business background too?
I don't know.
No, I'm kidding.
So I don't know how many of you saw, John went to the ESPN set immediately before he came
John
here.
or Patrick?
And
Well,
John,
John was there,
said he
right.
was not a candidate for the job.
Right.
I know it's not gonna be
Right.
John.
Right.
Well, can we clone Patrick, getting to move to Nona? It's gonna be hard to replace Patrick. I was involved with the search when we hired Patrick, and it's a damn hard job, and it's gonna be hard to find somebody. But start with a lot of his talents, and you'd have a good candidate.
Mark, that was my question, but would Jose be considered at all, or, I mean, do you want a big name like Patrick, or what?
You know, honestly, hadn't thought about it, if you want to know the truth. The reason being, Patrick and I had had this discussion. We were in no rush. We simply, because he wanted it to come out on his terms, and as things began to break, we decided to talk tonight. We really haven't gotten that far down the road.
Anyone else? Ben?
Patrick, how do you think your tenure in this sort of era of American tennis should be remembered?
Well, I hope it'll be remembered when we have a bunch of players that are at the top, you know, in a few years, because I think, as you have probably learned, Ben, in your years now covering tennis, that it's a long road, you know, to get to the top. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And, you know, Jose and I fully expect Mark just to at least chime in on that, for Jose to be involved. I'd like him to be, I like him to be on the court more, to be honest. So I think that's his number one role, is to be on the court working with players. We had already had discussions about him doing more of that in the near future, particularly with some of our young boys that are coming up. But it's, you know, what we always talked about was wanting to put a structure in place, a structure that would help us create a good succession of high-quality players. I've said from the start in taking this job that I never suspected that we or any one person or program can create Serena Williams or John McEnroe or Pete Sampras. But I do believe that if you create a good system and a good program that's organized, that has a coaching philosophy, which we have, that reaches out with the great private sector that's out there, that are in this game, that are in this world, which there are not that many of them, by the way. There are some great ones, but there's not that many of them. That if you do that, that this is a 15 to 20-year project. And so there's some disappointment in me to not see the whole thing through, but I have to be realistic about it, you know, when I first went to Orlando 2 years ago, as we were looking potentially for sites just for player development at that time, before it became a much bigger deal for the USTA, you know, I wanted to do what I thought was right for the USTA and for tennis in the country. I'm going to continue to do that. So I would hope that some of those things will have set some of the parameters in place and put some good things in motion. And again, it's a complete team effort. So I hope that I've led some of that charge that, You know, we can't really just sit back, I believe, anymore and rely on, well, geez, how come we used to have half the draw at the US Open? Well, guess what? I mean, the world has changed.
Howard, how much, if at all, have you tried to pick up things from other countries and the way they develop players and anything?
I think you always try to find that balance of being, we are the United States, and we do want to do things our way. We do want to have the individual obviously be emphasized, but I do think that we wanted to get a bit more organized in the way we approach coaching and coach educating, et cetera. But at the same time, obviously, you always look at what countries are doing that are having success, whether it's France, Spain, Russia, et cetera. But at the same time, I don't think we ever want to lose what we do well, which is, you know, be aggressive players, serve big, be attacking type players. But you also have to realize that the game has changed. The game is played from the back court. You need to be able to hit a lot of balls. You need to be able to run. You need to be very athletic. We've had clay courts here. We have clay courts in Florida. We're going to have a lot more clay courts, and some of them will be red, which will be nice in Orlando. We have clay courts in our facility in California. We changed the Orange Bowl back to clay. You know, so there's a lot of things that tie into that to try to help our kids develop better so that they become better players.
Transition anything more than you, Patrick, trying to help find a successor, or does it involve something else? And what's the timeline Gordon gave for finding a replacement?
Why don't I start? I mean, to me, I think, you know, a lot of this is new news. It's something, you know, we're in the middle of the US Open, which is something that needs a lot of focus. But we will begin to plan and come up with something that really makes sense. This is not about change in strategy. You know, we think the inclusiveness, what we're doing and how we're trying to work to develop American champions is the right formula. We have a great team, and we just have to continue to move forward. How that looks, you know, I think we need a few months to figure that out, and the role that Patrick will play in it and the guidance that he'll give us. He's learned a lot. You know, and sometimes you have to take that learning and use it to make your decision making.
I would say that's an unknown, but, you know, if 4 to 6 months could be longer, and he will have much broader involvement than just finding a successor. He's running the show, he's in place, and he's going to be there to do that till this happens. He's going to be involved in the search. He's going to be involved in transferring the knowledge and the lessons learned. So it'll be a broad involvement going forward in the transition.
Lisa?
You talked about the developmental process, but what hasn't been mentioned is our junior competition structure in this country. In my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, that's kind of an underlying issue with why we're not seeing more players emerge.
I think I think it's safe to say that we've got some issues in junior comp. There's no doubt about that. And we're certainly trying to tackle it in the best way that we can. I will say, and I've sort of said this before and maybe said it the wrong way and pissed some people off, but I will say that I don't think that's the reason that we don't have players at the top of the professional game. I think it's part of it, just like I don't think, well, we need to have better coaching education. All the things combined matter, and I think junior competition matters. At the same time, I do, you know, if you're going to make that argument, which you're welcome to make, then you might want to look at, well, how are we doing in girls? I mean, we seem to have a lot of girls. We seem to have a lot of girls in the top 100 and a lot more coming. So they sort of play under the same system as well. So I think the premise of your question and statement is accurate, that we need to do a better job in that area. But I do think that it's one of many issues.
Patrick, in the last couple of years when you were out there looking at the Orlandos and whatever, were you aware from the start that you were basically looking for something that was going to take you out of the job? Or was there a point when you thought you'd be able to stay with it?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, I think we you know, obviously I feel like I've been able to do the job from here. If I didn't feel I could do the job properly, I wouldn't have kept doing it. But I do think that, look, my interest is always in what I think was best for the program. And that's the bottom line. And as I said, I mean, Gordon and I discussed, potential directions to go. And I think we both looked at each other. I mean, we've worked well. We've been honest with each other for all these years. Dave, since he became president as well, and said, look, I think this is going to work best for this position at this point to be based there. So, I guess I was my own worst enemy if I said I wanted to keep the job for as long as I could. But that's not, I never looked at the job from that perspective. I looked at it as a great opportunity. I was paid well, obviously. I did my best. I'm going to continue to do my best. I made some mistakes. But I think generally speaking, I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to be part of Davis Cup for 10 years, in this job for, 6.5 years. Maybe it'll be 7 by the time I sort of officially step aside, whatever it is. That's a pretty good run. It's a pretty good run. USTA has treated me great. I've always been very honest with me. I've been honest with them. And I'm going to continue to do that.
Bill. Hey, Patrick, moving forward, probably for the last, 40 years, professional football, professional basketball, to a lesser extent, hockey, baseball leagues have been pretty shrewd in using colleges to basically be a very seamless pipeline, cheap.
Right.
Some could say exploited, but do you think that tennis has done or could do a better job of exploiting the sort of infrastructures already in college to produce?
There's no doubt we could do a better job, and that's why we assigned one of our coaches to specifically follow college tennis and specifically work with the players and the coaches. At the same time, I like to deal in reality as well. And if you look at the reality of the rankings of men's and women's tennis, the majority of the players didn't go to college. It's just a fact. I mean, it's just a reality. That being said, we're seeing some darn good players come out of college, particularly on the men's side, even a few on the women's side that are doing well, and that's great. And what really rang true with me, Bill, was when I did some of my travels around the country, and I heard from a lot of parents that was important to them, that college tennis be a viable option, because at 9 or 10, it's pretty hard to say if you're going to be a pro or not. Okay. So that sort of re-energized me to say, we need to make sure that and do what we can to help college tennis, because a lot of we might lose a lot of players when their kids are 8, 9, or 10 that do other sports and get involved in other things, and the parent says, well, geez, college tennis is I don't know, maybe it's not real viable. So I think we need it to be healthy, and the healthier it can be, it's better for tennis in general, and I think it can be a pipeline, but it's not going to be like football.
So folks, I think we have to, do you have I'll take a last question. Do you have time for one more? Go ahead, Harold.
I was going to say, Patrick, one of the things that we talked about over the years as well as that gap, and you brought it up earlier, between the public and the private.
Mm-hmm.
And could you talk just a little bit about that relationship in terms of how that's grown, or it really is one of the
Mm-hmm.
places of kind of antagonism between.
Well, I think it needs to get better, because that's obviously been a huge push for us recently, and the reason I say that is because it's so much harder to make it, and the private sector, the tennis world has changed. I don't mean professional tennis. I mean the business of tennis has changed to where clubs and academies, et cetera, they have it's more financially based now. It's economics of how they can just stay in business. So the better a junior tennis player gets as a kid from 11, 12, 13 up until whatever, 17 or 18, the more resources it takes for them to continue to develop. That's where I believe the USTA can play a huge part in helping that process, be part of the process, certainly not be the only part. We definitely know that. But at the same time, we need to send that message to those coaches out there, and they also need to receive the message, I believe, from the USTA, that you may very well need us at some point, and that can be a good thing. If you think you can do it all alone, God bless you and good luck, but it's pretty darn tough. And the USTA can be a valuable resource in that process.
Thank you, everybody. We should turn the room over. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.